And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is episode 102 of Keepin' It Rio. And today, this is going to be very unique. I've got a guest from a completely different location from anywhere we've ever been. And I believe the story is going to be unique to anything we've ever spoken to as well. So, without any hesitation, let me welcome our guest, Mr. Jonathan Royle, to Keepin' It Rio. Welcome to Keepin' It Rio, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Chuck. I'm here. I'm alive. That's always a good thing.
I love it. So tell me right off the bat, where are you coming to us from? Because obviously we have a little bit of a different twang, if you will. So where are you coming to
Yeah,
us from today?
well, I am currently sat in my office in a place called Rochdale, which is in the Greater Manchester area of United Kingdom, England. Um, yeah, but the crazy accent is is a complete and utter kind of hodgepodge mix up because I spent a lot of my life traveling around from one town to another and stuff as a performer. Because I was born on the circus, and then obviously I've also performed throughout my life. So it's otherwise a bit of a crazy accent.
I like it though. It's unique, and unique is what we're looking for because I think you've got a very unique story, and I think you already just hit on it. To get this ball rolling, you were born into the circus, so you've been a performer your entire life. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, now I'll just say up front for viewers and listeners that some of this is going to sound really batshit crazy.
That's what I
Uh, it's
love.
it's one of those things where sometimes the truth truly is stranger than fiction. So all I can say is that some of this is going to seem so bizarre. So every now and again, I might make reference to, especially for those of you in America who may not be aware of certain things that have occurred in England historically. I may just throw out there, if you tap that into YouTube, you'll get videos up that will back up what I'm saying is not as batshit crazy as it may first sound. Or failing that, I might just say, hey, at the end of the interview, if you go to magicalguru.co.uk, that's just my career resume, but there's links on there to other people's independent websites that have got nothing to do with me that provide proof and evidence.
I
Even as I
love
say
it.
it, it's good because some of what I'm going to say sounds so. But
Those are
this
the
is
best stories. The ones that you have to go do some research because you're like, there's no way that could be real. Those are the best ones. So I am very excited
exactly.
for this. This is
Well,
going to be
well,
great.
this is full of it then. So let's start at the beginning. I was born on the 13th of August 1975 into a show business family whilst my parents were travelling with Gandhi's Circus here in England. And at the time, my dad was under the name Tizzy the Clown, performing as a circus clown, and also under the name The Amazing Etna, was doing a fakir. That's Fakir, fakir act, which is like fire eating, lying on beds of nails, dancing on broken glass, going up ladders of daggers, all that weird, crazy stuff. We haven't even started yet with the craziness. And my mum was doing a sharpshooting Wild West cowgirl type act. So I was born on the circus. And as is the thing with the circus, people teach each other their acts so that if somebody's injured, somebody else can stand in. And the old saying goes, the show must go on. And also, it's another tradition to get the kids involved performing as young as possible. So at the age of 3 and a bit, it was very late. So it was about November 1978, to be precise. I made my performance debut, age 3 and a bit, as Flap the Clown. And people can see embarrassing photographs of me at that age in the circus ring at that web link I gave before, magicalguru.co.uk, because I know it does sound a bit, yeah, really, right, you sure? But the evidence exists because it's real. And that's where this crazy path started. So when I say some of the stuff's batshit crazy, before I get onto the more slightly darker, serious stuff, which has led me to where I am today, spending most of my time helping other people to, overcome issues in their life and get over the shit that might have been holding them back in life. Let's explain how that came about. Well, I during my life upbringing, the so-called formative years, as Sigmund Freud, or Sigmund Freud, as more people may know him better, um, dubbed them, from birth to, he said 7 years of age, but I kind of say it's probably more like teenage years, puberty time, when from birth to puberty, that's when your personal laptop computer gets really programmed with the things that are going to either hold you back or really push you forward positively in the future as you grow up as an adult, without you even being consciously aware. We'll come to that later. So I had lots of bizarre, traumatic. Looking at them now, some of them weren't traumatic if you look at them from the point of view of an adult, but as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, from that age perspective, they were traumatic. And that's all that matters, because at the time I experienced them, as viewers and listeners who've had traumatic childhood experiences, and you all have, even if you're not consciously aware, we'll come back to that later, they get frozen in time with the reaction trauma level that the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old or the 5-year-old experienced. So even though consciously as an adult we could look at those things, and an example being, say, a 3-year-old at a birthday party playing with the balloons, decides there's only one red balloon left. I want that. And in that moment, to that 3-year-old, that is the most precious, valuable thing on the planet. And then suddenly it gets popped, destroyed. And in that moment, the child cries and is in trauma. He's actually arguably suffering, grieving like a death. Because to us as an adult, thinking about a pop red balloon, we might laugh at it and go, that can't possibly be affecting me now as an adult. But the thing is, it didn't happen to you as an adult. It happened in that example when you were 3 and a bit. And to you, the trauma experienced, arguably, frozen in time in that moment into your unconscious mind with personal laptop computer, was as traumatic as you as an adult now losing a loved one or family member. As daft as that might sound, but you've got to remember it's the difference between thinking like an adult or thinking like a child. So I had loads of experiences growing up that some would say will come under the traumatic level. For example, at the age of 4, in England, we had a tea that you drink, a company called PG Tips, P for Polly, G for Green. PG Tips was one of the brands of a company called Brook Bond Tea. And I mentioned that clearly so that people can, this is one of the things people can check out on YouTube. In the late 70s and early 80s, Brook Bond PG Tea ran adverts on the television, commercials, with chimpanzees dressed up as human beings with voices dubbed over. They were comical adverts, and you can see them on, as I say, YouTube. And the PG Brook Bond tea advert, chimpanzees, came on tour with Gandhi's Circus in circa 1979, 1980. And they would be performing 2 acts before me and my dad. So they'd have done their act. They'd be leaving the stage if we were in a theatre, or the circus ring, having done their bit. The act after them would have gone on, and me and my dad would be making our way to get to the ring doors or the wings in the theatre, because we'd be the next act on after the act that had just... And we invariably would cross paths with Billy Day, the chimpanzee trainer. And he'd be holding one hand either side of a chimpanzee. And we're walking back with him. And now I was only 4 and a bit at the time, so I was roughly the same height as the 4-year-old as the chimps were. And every time that this happened, twice a day when we did 2 shows, so numerous times a week, as they crossed paths, my dad, Billy Day, the chimp trainer, would say to my dad, "Hi, Tiz," because my dad, Tiz is a clown. And in that moment, he'd be distracted, turn and go, "Hi, Billy." And in that second, in that split second, the chimp nearest to me would whack me around the head. Now, the good news is that I don't think it caused any long-lasting brain damage. The better news for me, anyway, is I later found out in adult years that had the chimp been aggressive, they actually have enough strength that they could have caused brain damage or unconsciousness or potentially killed me. So clearly it was just being playful, because it saw me as being the sort of same height. But one other major thing that sticks in my head from the circus is that, again, this is before I was 5, I was playing hide and seek with the other kids off the circus. And I went and hid under one of the caravans, the trailers, the living wagons of the people on the circus. Unfortunately for me, I'd gone and hidden under the lion tamer's caravan. More unfortunately for me, I didn't know that chained up underneath that caravan was a puma, a wild cat, that was somewhat startled by me suddenly crawling underneath the caravan to where it is. And it starts playing with me. And I've now got claw mark scars on my head, down my back. This ear, my left ear, which is why I've got headphones in now, but I just took out my hearing aid earlier, got ripped off by the puma and had to be surgically reattached. As you can imagine, it was quite traumatic, and I was screaming for my life, but I was, as you can, spoiler alert, I'm sat here, I was saved in the nick of time. Otherwise I would have died that day. That was another traumatic experience. And then things started to happen, because by this point I was getting conditioned as Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov. That name might ring a bell to some people. Excuse the pun. The guy who rang the bell apparently and made dogs salivate. Conditioned response, operant conditioning, as it's called in psychology. Well, or creating an anchor, as they call it in NLP. Well, by the time I was 6, I'd had a good couple of years or so of an audience clapping at the right times, laughing at the right times, and you might say that got me anchored, conditioned to wanting to feel that appreciation, and you might say metaphoric love from an audience. And that became a bigger divide for me at the age of 6. And when my mum decided that she wanted me to have a normal, and I'm doing that quotes think of what the hell is normal, but normal upbringing, not moving from town to town every week. And so she demanded that we get a house and I go to a normal school and just perform at evenings, weekends, or school holidays when the circus was near enough by. And that's what happened. And unfortunately for me, fortunately on the one hand, but it had negative repercussions. Shortly after I started at that school in a place called Ainsworth, where the kids were fantastic, got on with them really well, never had any issues from the kids, no bullying from the kids, just in case any of them are watching this. I can't say a bad word, and I have no bad words to say about any of the kids. Unfortunately, shortly after starting, I appeared in the British national newspaper, the Daily Mirror, with a headline that said, "Alex, the Circus 6 hit," and a picture of me as a clown. Again, it's on magicalguru.co.uk if anyone wants to see the article. And when that appeared, well, the teachers quickly worked out that on a pro rata basis, I was earning more than them. Now, obviously, that's a pro rata basis because I wasn't doing as many hours as them, but an hourly rate I was. So really, they had no reason to be jealous or envious or whatever. But for some reason, they started to make my life a living hell. And the only phrase I can use for it is they started bullying me. They humiliated me, were nasty to me. Not all of them, but the vast majority of the teachers. So much so that I begged to move. I wanted to go to a different school, but there was no other school in that village. And it took until I was about 7.5, so a good 18 months, I guess, give or take a couple of months, until my parents actually bought a house in a different town, and we moved, and I started at a new primary school. And I'm delighted to say that any bullying from teachers immediately ended at that school, St Luke's CV. Can't praise the teachers enough, especially the headmaster, Peter Badley. I always remember his name clearly because, he'd go on holiday and he'd come back and he bought me a magic trick and he knew that I was well into magic as a hobby. I performed as a clown, but at an early age, I developed a passion for conjuring and magic tricks. And I had it in my mind, this idea that one day I'd stop doing the clowning and magic would become what I did to perform, to get that appreciation from an audience, which by now I was even more reliant on, because the bullying was having a negative effect on me. But I thought that had ended. Unfortunately, I appeared in the media again. And this time it was the kids, not all of them, but a number of them, that started bullying me, name calling, physically attacking me on a pretty much daily basis. And anyone who says sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me, is talking bollocks. Words are, lyrics from a song, words are like weapons sometimes, and they are. It's
especially at that age, for sure. And after
yeah,
going through all that, that's, I mean, already you've experienced a lifetime of experiences, and I mean, wow, this is very fascinating.
Oh, I've missed a whole bunch out. Otherwise, we'd be here forever. I mean, I'd been involved in road traffic accidents. Where back in the day, I didn't even have a seatbelt on, but fortunately, I was okay. Yeah, there were a whole bunch of other traumas. I'm just giving some highlights here, as it were. So the bullying started, and that continued, and it got so bad. Long story cut short, that just before, I think it was roughly just before I was about 12. Just readjust that light. There we go. It was when we were just finishing primary school and about to move to what in England we call secondary school. I know you probably call it high school in America, I think. But there again, you have 3 schools in America. It's a bit different, but what we call secondary school anyway. So I wasn't quite 12. And one day in wintertime, fall, I think they call it in the States, where it gets darker quicker. It suddenly occurred to me that if I lay down in the middle of the busiest main road in Haywood, that because traffic was always whooshing past trucks, and that without being too graphic about it, it'd be an end to all the pain very rapidly.
I could see
so I
that.
did lay down. And I honestly can't tell you how long I was laying that road, but I got fed up because bizarrely no traffic seemed to come along. Now the thing is, I look back on it and I realise now as an adult, time is a construct, man-made construct, and in terms of how we feel and experience it, that changes. So you can see somebody you've not seen for years, start talking to them and catching up on things, and suddenly look at your watch and 3 or 4 hours has gone by, but it feels like 5 minutes. And conversely, there can be times in your life where perhaps you go in for an interview or a job appraisal with your boss or something, and it feels like you've been in there for like well over an hour, and then you walk out, look at your watch, and you've actually only been in there less than 5 minutes. So how we perceive time, so because of that, I genuinely don't. I can't. It just felt like ages. It was probably only a matter of 30 seconds or a minute, because I can't imagine the traffic freakishly having stopped coming down that busiest main road for that long. Anyway, I eventually stand up and start walking back towards the sidewalk, and I put my foot on the pavement. And the moment I do, I hear this whoosh, and I feel this big draft, and I turn and I see a big, massive, articulated lorry whirling past, and then traffic after traffic after traffic. It's like, and in that moment, I shit myself, which is one of the inspirations for my book I'll talk about later, being called Shitnosis. And I also thought, hang on, there's got to be a better solution than this. And in later years, I've read about people who jumped out of multi-story buildings to end it all, because they thought, there was nothing they could do and they had too many problems going on. And some of those people have survived. And if you search the internet for, survivors of suicide attempts from multi-story buildings, one consistent thing you see is that they all say the moment they jumped out of the window, they realised they didn't have hundreds of problems. They had just one. And that one problem was that they just jumped out of a multi-story building. It kind of focuses the mind and makes you look at things differently. So I was determined to find a solution to stop feeling like to stop that little voice inside the head telling me I wasn't good enough, I didn't deserve it. The only kind of escape I had at the time was where I felt truly loved and worthwhile was when an audience clapped or, laughed at the right time. I cheered. But the trouble was that also was conflicted with the fact that I blamed my dad as a circus clown coming back from that background for kind of getting me into that, because I figured that if I hadn't been involved in that kind of stuff, then I wouldn't have got bullied. So what I then decided to do was I refused to ever do the clowning stuff again, stop putting the red nose on. But I still crave this love and appreciation, you may say, from an audience. So I, by that point, had developed magic acts to a professional level. So I started doing magic as the performance thing, but I still got bullied to a degree. And I was seeking an answer. And one day I was in the adult library where my mum had got me permission to get books out because the kids' magic books, my skill level had gone way beyond that. And in the Dewey Decimal Book, what's it called? The Dewey Decimal Library Book Numbering System, which we have universally. The Conjuring books were under sports and pastimes. And to the right of them, which I'd never noticed previously, were the popular psychology and self-help section. And I saw the spine of a book and it said How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I thought, that's it. This is like a sign. How to win friends and influence people. If I can win these people over as friends, then they're not going to bully me. Well, I got the book, read it, tried it out. Long story cut short, it's a great book for adults to read and utilize the techniques with common sense with other adults. However, a 12-year-old using it on other 12-year-olds, it's not worth shit. In fact, if anything, it probably made things worse. So I was still searching for an answer. And then I saw another book a number of weeks later in the same section called Day by Day in Every Way by a French guy called Emile, Emile, Coué, Coue. He was one of the founders of behavioralism psychology and of personal self-affirmations and suggestions, arguably the forerunner to what we know as The Secret and the Law of Attraction. And he's most famous for the personal self-affirmation of day by day, in every way, I'm getting and feeling better and better. And I started using this, and you know what? Through repetition, first thing in the morning, when you open your eyes, but you're not fully awake yet, it's what they call the hypnopompic state. And at night time, when you start yawning, you haven't quite gone to sleep, but you're not fully with it, which is called the hypnagogic state. This is when your critical faculty, analytical area of the mind, what I call the so-called gatekeeper, it's kind of like a nightclub bouncer that's stopping you getting into the nightclub of your unconscious, subconscious mind, or stopping you get to the personal laptop computer hard drives, as I like to imagine it, enables you to, those suggestions, those affirmations, to go in and take root in your personal laptop computer and start to override the negativity. And it did help a bit. It gave me more resilience and helped me deal with the bullying. But the bullying was still happening. Until I learned about a few different psychological techniques that I combined together, which Emile Coué talked about. One was something he called the law of reversed effort, which in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, they refer to as what resists persists. They also talk about that you get more of what you focus on in life. So an example of this is when a stage hypnotist gets people to put their hands together, squeeze them together, and then tells them to imagine them locking, gluing, welding, cementing, bolting together, and now just try to separate your hands. Now the idea is that the word try implies there is a possibility you won't be able to, which is why I always also call it the Star Wars syndrome, the Yoda principle, because in Star Wars, Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try, because he's explaining to the young Jedi that by entertaining the idea that you're trying something is entertaining the possibility of failure. And therefore, if your mind grasps hold of the idea of possible failure, you won't achieve your full potential. And also I learned about a thing called pattern interrupts. And this is the idea that we have routines and patterns in everyday life, certain expectations in certain situations that are running as programs in our personal neck-top computer, unconscious, subconscious mind. And if somebody does something out of the ordinary, unexpected, that interrupts that pattern, the computer goes, well, what's going on? And our critical faculty analytical area gets confused and disorientated, a slight element of sensory overload. It flicks us into that fight, flight, freeze, or shite. It's the freeze bit, actually, where, like the cat in the headlights, like, what's going on? What's going on? And I put all these together and I thought, you know what? I have nothing to lose. So the next day at school, this is at high school by this time, the bully who came along and his usual pattern was to find me, pin me against the wall as he's giving verbal insults, and then to give more verbal insults, and then to hit me and walk off with his entourage. Well, this day, as his hand started coming towards me and he's started the verbal insults, I thought, I've nothing to lose. I'm going to get a hit anyway. So I said, stop with your effing insults. Why don't you stop effing wasting time? Just effing try and hit me now, you effing idiot. Go on, try and hit me. Try. And a strange thing happened. Yeah, he just about connected with my neck, but suddenly kind of stopped, looked at me, and I could see their eyes kind of glaze over. Like, what the hell is this idiot doing? And I now realise from my studies and experiences over the past several decades that in that moment, it interrupted the pattern, the expectations, and caused confusion and disorientation, so-called sensory overload, that had caused the critical faculty analytical area, the nightclub bouncer metaphor, to go, what the fuck's going on? I'm out of here. And just caused that whole frozen what's going on. And therefore, to save face, he suddenly let go of me, walked off, turned and said, don't effing come near me ever again. Got his crowd to follow and never came near me again. And that's when I realised that words are not just weapons that can wound. They can be used in incredibly powerful ways to change situations and realities. And that gave me this craving to learn more, which ultimately meant by the time of 1989, when I was 14 years old, I'd sought out and found a clinical hypnotherapy course, and I'd studied it, taken the exam, and at the age of 14, I became the youngest ever member, and still hold that title to this day, of the Association of Professional Hypnotherapists and Psychotherapists here in England, which I was so impressed by that in later years, kind of in a Victor Khayyam electric razor company way, where he was so impressed with the razor, he bought the company. A number of years ago, I bought the rights to the entire APHP clinical hypnotherapy training course, and I include it as part of my much bigger hypnosis training courses at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. And that set me on the path. And what I didn't do, I managed to stop the bullying at school there, but it still happened in my life. To some degree, because I was getting myself in the media a lot, doing my magic shows, and also I started doing stage hypnosis shows with the skills I'd learned. And I also did apparent psychic shows and metal bending and a whole bunch of other things people can learn about on magicalguru.co.uk. But I made one fatal mistake because I felt a bit better because of the things I'd learned from MLQA. And the bullying had stopped to the degree it was. It hadn't stopped completely, but it had stopped, and I'd got some coping tools. I reached a level I seemed far better, a massive improvement on what it had been. So I didn't continue the self-healing I should have done. I'm there helping people overcome their habits, addictions, fears and phobias, to deal with anxiety, panic attacks, overcome depression, chronic pain, you name it, from A through to Z. I was dealing with this stuff from the age of 14, actual paid clients. And yet I got to like 17, 18 years of age, and I'm smoking cigarettes. Yeah, I stopped other people smoking. I'm drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. I'm taking cocaine. I'm gambling. I'm taking risk. I'm living this lifestyle that's just very unbalanced, frankly. I mean, by that point, I was earning a remarkable amount of money for my age because I was appearing on television a lot as a stage hypnotist and at big venues here in England. But I was spending more than I was earning, and I was earning way above average. So it was a ridiculous lifestyle. And yet I already had all the answers. I just hadn't applied them to myself. And then one day, and it literally was one day, I just woke up and thought, "What the effing hell are you doing?" And then I started to apply the techniques that I used to help other people on myself, and went from alcoholism to moderate drinking, to not smoking, not taking cocaine. I'm not going to say never gambling because I buy a ticket for the lottery every now and again, you know. And I gamble every day, but now I gamble on something I'm more certain on winning with, and that's on myself achieving more things in my career. As cheesy as I know that's going to sound. So I did then put them to use on myself, and it was a total. And actually, ironically, once I'd used these things on myself to help, metaphorically, help the inner child within that was frozen in time through all those traumatic incidents that, as I say, as an adult, might not have even been consciously aware of. But they were frozen in time. There's processes that I use with clients, and I teach in the book, Shitnosis, that help you to literally make peace with and get forgiveness from your inner child. And there's QR codes in this book as well, which when scanned, take you to interactive videos where I talk you through the process. So it's like having me in the room with you as a personal therapist, except instead of paying me $500 an hour, you just buy one book for $17, and all the other therapy interaction is free through these videos. So yeah, by healing the inner child, unlocking those traumas, and also using techniques to go into the personal desktop computer and delete the negative programs that we're running and install, metaphorically, positive antivirus software for the desktop computer, the brain, which is what I do with clients and what you're taught to do for yourself in Shitnosis. I was able to overcome the shit in my life and put that negative shit behind me and move forward, having got my shit together. Hence, it's called Shitnosis, how to get over the shit in your life and get your shit together, because this is like the past several decades of what I've used with other clients, but also on myself, put together in a hopefully people will find amusing, although some will find elements of it offensive, no doubt, but that's fine. It'll still help you. Book with the accompanying videos to help people change their lives. So they don't have to remain in those dark spots. They don't have to walk around with all that self-blame, shame, guilt, regret, fear, anger, resentment, remorse that they're walking around with from experiences that they may not even remember happening. But because they happened so long ago and seemed insignificant now as an adult, but at the time were truly mini traumas. And then, you know, and at the other end of the scale, you've got people who have things that they do remember. I remember some stuff, but there's people out there who will remember, unfortunately, you know, being victims of child abuse. Well, they've got even more things that they perhaps need to, you know, traumas that they need to deal with and unlock. Because, you know, I'm not saying you've got to forget what people have done to you and the negativity they put towards you, but to some degree, you've kind of got to forgive and move on. Otherwise, it's a bit like walking around with a red hot poker in your hand. If you keep hold of it, the only person it's hurting, harming, and burning more is you, not the person who handed you the poker. So you have to forgive, accept, release, let go. And that's not easy to do consciously. In fact, it's practically impossible to do consciously because the critical faculty, analytical area, that nightclub doorman, won't let you into the computer banks, your desktop computer, because it thinks it's protecting you. But the thing is, he didn't start working for you, metaphorically, until you were about a teenager. Prior to then, everything was going into those computer banks, positive or negative, to formulate who you are now and the way you react to things. And that's why people react differently to different situations. It's based on what happened from birth to the teenage years. So what you need to do, because all human beings at heart, and I go into this massively in the first chapter of, actually not the first chapter, the second chapter of the book is called How Your Head Got So Full of Shit, plus Why Your Life is Shit Sometimes. And it explains how people become emotionally and psychologically constipated. Hence, the next chapter is sit down, relax, let it go. Are you emotionally constipated? The positive mind laxative of self-hypnosis. And this explains how, as human beings, to function properly, to feel whole, to feel balanced, to feel healthy, to be the best possible us, to not have habits, addictions, fears, or phobias, to not allow health complaints to affect us more than they need to. We need to feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. Now, they all sound very similar, but if you get a thesaurus and check out the meaning of the words loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, you'll find some relate to self-image, some to self-esteem, some to self-confidence, some to self-control, aka willpower. They relate to different things, even though they sound the same. So the thing is, when you realize that if there's been any negative impact from birth to the teenage years, puberty, on a person, the way they feel or don't feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. And remember, these are things people won't be consciously aware of right now because it's how they reacted at that age. Then it will have had a negative impact in some way on their self-confidence, their self-image, their self-control, and their self-esteem. And if there's been any negative impact on them, it's going to negatively impact on their levels of self-love, self-respect, self-worth, and positive selfishness. That's looking after yourself so you can then look after other people. And if there's any negative impact on them, it's going to ultimately have a negative impact on their self-identity, the inner them, the real them. And if there's any imbalance there, that manifests by people feeling as though they're incomplete, there's something missing. Some people try and fill that hole with religion. Some try and bury it by eating too much. Some try and escape it through drugs. Some try and cause a smoke screen, metaphorically, through habits, addictions, and such, tend to be metaphoric, external manifestations, an outside issue caused, an outside symptom or demonstration of an internal conflict or issue or imbalance. So I discovered very early on in my career, not just through helping myself, but helping others, that the key to everything is to be able to help the inner child at all those years from birth to teenage feel healed, loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, so that in turn the self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, and self-control gets balanced out, and in turn so does the self-worth, self-respect, self-love, and positive selfishness, so that the person can feel whole again. So that little voice we all have in our head starts to say good things rather than saying negatives. All right, there'll be times of moments of self-doubt. That's normal. That's everyday life. But the majority of the time, you need the little voice saying good things. And that's how you overcome habits, addictions, fears, phobias, and other stuff, and all the other stuff that we mention in the book. And I'm living testament myself, but not just through myself, but through helping thousands and tens of thousands of people over the years, of which there is evidence galore at Magical Guru, magicalguru.co.uk, of other people saying how I've helped them change their life. But the key is there, I help them to go through processes they could do upon themselves once they knew those processes existed, which is why I confidently say you don't need to physically see a therapist. You don't need to be mind raped, reliving traumatic experiences you'd forgotten about anyway. You don't need to have those relived. You just need the computer memory banks to be negative stuff to be deleted, the intensity of emotion to be reduced, a new positive software to be installed, which is what you will learn in shitnosis, helping you get over the shit in your life and get your shit together. And that's what's brought me to where I am here today, although along the way, I've taken inspiration from other things like magic, as I mentioned before.
This is absolutely amazing story, and I'm captivated by what you're saying here. This is just really great. Thank you for taking the time to be here today with this.
My pleasure.
I mean,
my pleasure.
wow, I'm drawn to this conversation. You did just mention magic, and obviously that's something that is pretty cool as well. I like it. Let me ask you one real quick question before we segue into that. Okay.
Yeah.
With hypnotherapy, have you ever been in, or I guess the question would be, what is the largest group that you've ever done a group? I don't want to use a term that's not proper. Hypnosis, I guess, is the term, correct?
Yeah.
What's the largest group you've ever done? And have you ever had anybody that just flat out refused to go along and let it work? And have you ever had anybody that it just didn't work for?
Yeah, in the context of therapy, there have been people who perhaps their husband or wife had pushed them into coming to see me, saying, yeah, you can stop smoking, go and see this therapist. But the individual themselves they hadn't reached that breaking point, pivot point, where they for themselves wanted to stop. And not surprisingly, therefore, they weren't very compliant, they weren't very cooperative. They basically, in so many words, told me, I'm only here because the wife sent me. And, I said, well, you know what? I don't really want to take money off you. Why don't you just not have the session? And he goes, oh, no, I wouldn't be able to lie. The wife would know I was lying. But if I have it done and it doesn't work, wanted to pay me just so he could say he tried it, but he had no intentions of doing the follow-up daily mental exercises, which is relevant because there's exercises in this book will only work if you use them in the way that's instructed. Reading the book is not going to be a magic wand that changes your life. Applying what's in the book will be the magic wand. It's action that makes the difference. So, yeah, of course, there's been people. I've not had 100% success rate, but the failures have been due to the client in the main not being motivated, not wanting to. Now, as for the biggest live in person, where the people have physically been in the room with me, I've had a couple of 100 people in the room with me and done, a group session with people. But virtually, because when the internet started, which was a long time after a good number of years after I started doing therapy sessions, but I did a live online via Facebook a number of years ago, interactive hypnotherapy session that was interacted at the time live by thousands and thousands of people all at the same time. But I developed a treatment session that I call complete mind therapy that's structured in such a way. And well, anyway, there's so much in here, but it's in here. It's actually in the book. There's an interactive session where I take you through this complete mind therapy session. But it's structured in such a way that I can, for example, say to a client, I'm talking now to your unconscious mind. So as though I'm inputting new information into your personal desktop computer, and you've granted me full access to do anything that's required safely and positively for the brighter, perfect future of you. And as you imagine in your mind's eye that this starts to occur, you're not consciously aware of all those negative things of the past, and neither do I want you to relive them. Because as we said before, we don't want people being mind raped. Bollocks, don't need to relive the trauma. Just realize that your computer, your personal desktop computer, your brain, can positively delete the negative intensity of any negative emotional feelings, thoughts, or reactions that up until today used to be connected to those negative incidents of the past. And in a few moments' time, and then I go through certain processes. But the thing is, at no point have I had to say exactly what their habit, addiction, fear, or phobia is they want to overcome. they, as the human being going through it, already know what habit, addiction, fear, or phobia they need to overcome. And because of the way I've phrased it, their mind will fill in certain blanks for them and make it completely personal and specific and bespoke and tailor-made to them. So although I had thousands of people on this interactive session, each of them would have experienced it differently and in a way where it was personal and specific to them, in the same way as each reader of this book, Hypnosis, will experience it uniquely to them in a way that's right for them to be able to do what they need to do to achieve what they want to achieve.
That's awesome. So I see you've got some
Now,
cards here, my friend. This is the part that I've been most excited about. I'm not going to lie. Everything else before that was educational and drew me in because of just being interested. Let's just have some fun. Let's end our episode here on Keeping It Real with some fun.
Let's have a bit of fun then, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, let's leave ourselves, a typical day for me. I end up scratching my head anyway, saying, what the heck just happened? Give me something good to start my day, scratching my head, saying, what the heck just happened?
Okay, I've got about 3 things for you. So thing number 1, before we started, I took this deck of cards. I took them out. I took one card out of the deck and I turned it the other way around and popped it back in as a prediction. So there is one card the wrong way round in this deck. That I can tell you up front. I'm also going to tell you it's not one of the jokers, okay?
Okay.
So please don't name the joker because it's not one of them. And I'm also going to tell you it's not the ace of spades. And I tell you that because the front of the deck's got a spade on it and it's only one, ace is one, and people think that that's some kind of subliminal suggestion. However, I am going to send you on the count of 3 the name of the card, but I'm going to do it without saying a word.
Okay.
So on the count of 3, I'm going to do that and kind of send you the name of the playing card, and I want you to name out loud the first playing card that enters your head. 1, 2, 3. Now!
9 of clubs.
The 9 of clubs. We didn't set anything up, did we?
No, sir.
We've not prearranged anything, have we?
No.
Very important, because I'm sure people are going to find this slightly bizarre. But if I take them out, the box is empty. Keep these fully in camera view at all time. What do you say? The 8 of clubs?
9 of clubs.
The 9 of clubs. Now, there is one card, and I put it there so that it would be clear on camera. Only one card, face the other way in this deck, as you can see. Would you be amazed if I managed to send you the name of the right card and you just named the one card I turned the opposite way in the deck before we started?
I would indeed be amazed, yes. Yes, I would.
But I'm sure the viewers and listeners at home, even though we can't see them, would metaphorically be clapping their hands, stamping their feet and shouting for more if this was indeed the 9 of clubs.
Yes, I love it. That is amazing.
Free choice. We didn't set anything up.
We did not.
There'll be people out there, Lord, who swear blind that was set up. I promise you, it truly, truly, truly was not. Now,
no, because I actually tried to premeditate that, and I was going to say something completely different. So that was unique. I tried to cheat, and I couldn't do it.
I'm going to take this virtual background off because the virtual background, what that sadly does is sometimes things blur a tiny bit, and then that could look as though as I move things around that something bizarre's going on. And I want it to be quite clear that all I've got here are two spoons.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
Now, I've got these for a reason. One of my inspirations early in life was a guy called Uri Geller. Now, I refer to him as being the greatest magician of all time. And the reason he's the greatest magician of all time is the only one who's never admitted to being a magician. He's never given up any of his secrets. In fact, he says that he has special mind powers, and maybe he does. But, all I know is that over the years, I've witnessed him do things with spoons, and we've got 2 of them here, where he'd get people at home. And the reason this is relevant, when I was young, he said to me, Alex, because that's my birth name, my stage name is Jonathan Royle. He said to me, Alex, to be successful, be controversial. And at the age of 17 in England, when I first appeared on a British television show with my stage hypnosis skills. Channel 4's The Word. People can see the video on magicalguru.co.uk. I was doing outrageous adult type routines, and I became known as Europe's most outrageous hypnotist. And that was because I was inspired by Uri's advice, and it helped me, or it caused me a lot of negative attacks to be drawn towards me, and people saying you shouldn't be doing a show like that back then. And I wouldn't do now. We live in an entirely different world. It was very politically incorrect. And I do have a lot of regrets about certain things that I did. However, Uri was without doubt right. It made me stand out from the crowd, from everyone else. And suddenly, at the time, 17-year-old hypnotist suddenly became one of the busiest working hypnotists in England. And my career's, well, I advise, other famous name television people. So, there was a lot of, I learned a lot from Uri, and I observed him in person once, and he had a couple of spoons. And he said to the viewers, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the spoon up, whichever one you choose, frankly. So let's say this is spoon A, the one in the air, and the one down here, the lower one, is B. Just say out loud, A or B right now.
A.
A is what we get rid of. That leaves B. Okay, now I'm going to try and keep on camera here, because what you do, there we go, is you gently rub it with one finger. And he'd say, everyone, concentrate the colour orange. Orange is like the sun beaming heat, but also it's a mixture of the colours red and yellow. It's the most powerful colour. Just imagine. Oh, it's already starting to happen. And he'd gently rub it with just one finger. And you see, it actually starts to bend visibly more and more and more. Can you see that?
Yes.
It's starting to happen. Try and keep that clearly in camera view at all times, because it's actually bending more and more. If we just compare that to the other one, that is quite a significant, all just through, it's mad. And then if we just take it, concentrate, 3, 2, 1, melt, and it just sort of, whoa, that is mental. Look at that. The power of the mind. And that's one of the things Uri Geller got world famous for. But in 1973, so it's 50 years ago this year, Uri Geller was on a show called The David Dimbleby Show, which people can see again on YouTube. And I saw a video of that. Obviously, I didn't watch it live because I wasn't born until 1975. But very early on, I did see Uri on British TV, and he'd appear and he'd be clacking his spoons or forks together and showing that they're nice and solid, which they are, because they're just flipping. Sorry, I've got so many of these things here. I'm going to try and keep it on. I'm trying to look at the screen because I don't want things to go. I've got too many. I'll get rid of some of them. Okay, what we'll do is this. We'll do like we did before. Well, we'll do it slightly differently. I'll make it quite clear to you. When this is going to be A, this is B. If you say A, that is the one I will keep and use. If you say B, that is the one I will keep and use. So which do you want me to keep and use, A or B?
A.
Okay, A is the one that we'll keep and use. And what Uri would do is, he'd say to everyone, really this time, really think of the colour orange more than before, like it's the hottest summer's day. And he'd start to rub. Now, obviously, you're getting the lights off my laptop shining on that, causing the light to go a bit funny. So if I just try and get to that angle, hopefully, yeah. You'll just have to excuse the fact it's doing that white thing at the side. That's because I'm shining light back at the camera lens. Okay. Oh, it's getting used to it now. And also it's starting to feel, oh, this is weird. Now, if I shake it like that, people will probably remember that thing you did at school with a pencil where you shake it and it looks rubbery. But I promise you, that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is actually that this is beginning to melt and bend. Melt and bend in more and more and more and more until it gets so hot it just snaps.
Wow.
Magic or tricks? You decide. Doesn't really matter, does it, Lo? It's a great metaphor for the fact that our minds are capable of far more than we realise sometimes, just when we reprogram our beliefs and expectations, which you'll learn how to do in Shitnosis, helping you overcoming the shit in your life and get your shit together. We'll show you how to program your mind so you can believe what you need to believe to fulfill your maximum potential. I'll leave you with this story. Roger Bannister. He was the person who ran the first 4-minute mile, a mile in 4 minutes or less. There were numerous other sports people with the same level of training as him, the same number of previous achievements, the same physical strength. None of them believed it was possible, but Roger Bannister did, and eventually he achieved it. Now, the moment he'd done it, and these other people who had the same training background but didn't believe it was possible, they suddenly had seen evidence it was possible and suddenly believed it was they'd be able to do it, because why shouldn't they be able to do if Roger had done it? And in the next week, a couple of more people did it. In the next month, numerous of them did it, which just goes to illustrate that we walk around as human beings with so much unfulfilled potential. And quite often what is stopping us achieving that full potential is that we're running negative programs going, we're not good enough, or we're not worthy, or we just don't believe that it's capable for us. We need that external reassurance. However, when you can fill that gap I talked about earlier, which this book will show you how, and you can feel balanced out and whole again, then you can be the Roger Bannister rather than having to be those that observe the Roger Bannisters, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. That is absolutely just. This has been the fastest hour I've ever had on my podcast. I've really enjoyed this so much. Let me ask you this.
Thank you. So have I.
Yeah, we're getting ready to wrap it up. So this is me being a little bit funny, but my fans, if they'd like to get a hold of you, do you by any chance have a website or any type of literature that you may have published, anything like that? I feel like you've been fairly intentional with making sure that we knew what was going on. So I've fallen for it. Shitnosis is going to be in my head all day. So tell our fans a little bit about how they can access you, how they can get more information about you and your story, and possibly even purchase a little Shitnosis and bring it into their life.
Excellent indeed. If you want your life to come smelling, end up smelling of roses, as it were, metaphorically, all positive, which is, what helps roses to grow? Manure. And what's manure? Shit. So you can take your negative shit, turn it to positive shit, make your life hot shit with Shitnosis, which you can just go onto Amazon or any major bookseller, search Jonathan Royle Shitnosis, and at the same time you'll see I've got numerous other books out. If you want to learn to become a clinically qualified hypnotherapist, then go to ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. To see the proof and the embarrassing photographs of me that I referred to, it's magicalguru.co.uk, which is magicalguru.co.uk. And on all social media channels you find me as @Royle Hypnotist, which is ROYLE. Are you with this thought? 2 spoons at once. Think now. Bend, 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 bend. And look, they visibly both of them start to bend. This one, whoa, that's ridiculous. That's gone really, really quick. That's one. And as for the other, well, hopefully. Now! It just... You can see that. I'm not even touching it, but it carries on bending more and more and more.
Yes, sir. I'm going to end this episode just by the corniest line I could possibly come up with, but that was some good shit. Jonathan Royle, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you. I'll put this out next week, and I'll clip it up a little bit, and I'll send you some of the clips as well so you can share.
I'll share it far and wide. Yeah, fantastic.
I love it. Thank you to all of our fans for watching. Until next time, keeping it Rio.